All right, y'all. I am Trudy Gill, and I have a former chair of the chamber, and I love doing SABA with Mr. Albert Marshall. He is the founder of SABA, which is the South Atlanta Business Association. And our goal today is to talk about best practices, accounting practices for our small business. We have been looking at different topics, and we had a roundtable in December, and this was a #1 hot topic, Mr. Ray. So that
All right.
Raymond, is it Raymond or Ray?
Either way, whichever rolls off your tongue easier.
Yeah, but which one do you prefer?
Ray, go with Ray. That's fine.
Okay. All right. We can do that.
Okay.
And so Ray is here with us today, but in order for him to know who all of us are, I'd like us to take a minute and introduce ourselves, introduce your business, and then tell us one happy thing about your business or a happy thing you have planned for your business for 2022. So somebody would like to start? I will. I'm Trudy Gill with Trudy Gill Leadership and Development, and I am a small business owner, and my business does leadership development in industry, is basically mainly where I am, as well as small business owners. And for this year, my goal is to contact the city and the county, and they have already reached out about doing some training, some leadership development with their supervisors. So my goal is to reach back out to them and see how I could be of assistance. So that's one goal that I have for this year, for 2022.
Excellent.
Okay.
My name is Albert Marshall. I do Legal Shield, ID Shield, and Family First Life. So I do life insurance as well. Yes, I am the founder of SABA and look forward to helping as many people out as possible.
Okay. And you got a goal besides helping people? Yeah, a goal. A specific one, Albert.
No, not today.
Okay. At least you're honest.
There you go.
Okay.
I'll go. Okay. My name is Carmen Caldwell. My business is Life Fulfilled Coaching and Consulting, and I help people show up powerfully and confidently in the areas of faith, life, and love. My goal is I have a group coaching program that is to launch early March. So my goal is to complete that back end membership, all that tech stuff to get ready for that.
Yes. Good. Thank you.
Excellent.
Mr. Johnny?
Well, yeah, I'll go ahead and share. I'm new to all this. This is my first time starting up a business. Me and my brother just opened one together.
Recording in progress.
Called, where's that? Okay. Thanks, Al. It's called Antbird Media, which focuses on drone photography, cinematography, and we're branching out into doing like real estate work, real estate photography. And like I said, I'm new to all this. I'm just a hard worker, and my goal is to get a few jobs within the next couple weeks. I'm reaching out to real estate places, and I guess that would make my goal to make connections, right? Start networking, because I literally just started this.
Well, good. Thank you, Johnny. We're glad you're here.
Great.
Well, thank you.
All right. Danny?
Well, I'm not a business owner, at least, well, I used to be, but my name is Danny Mitchell. I'm the business service manager at Works on Three Rivers. So I actually work with businesses throughout a 10-county region to help them either retain people through training or hire people using grant funding, people that are currently in the unemployment system. So what we're doing this year is continuing to expand our sector partnership development, both in healthcare and manufacturing, and looking at logistics as well. So we have several things coming up. We have our LMI training, which I sent out to our chambers, which when you talk about small businesses and how you develop your capabilities to understand what a marketplace looks like, labor market information, extremely important. That's free training that we'll be having coming up in June. And also we're having our industry roundtables to talk to industry leaders to be able to talk to them about hiring needs and how we develop comprehensive plans for workforce for the future, not just now. But that's my spiel.
Very good. All right, Miss Cindy.
I'm Cindy Jones. I'm President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce. My goal is to help businesses make better connections this year. So just to intentionally connect businesses to each other and to be more intentional about our communication of the Chamber's goals for the year. So but 2022 is having a slow roll for me. We've got to step it up and get it going for 22.
It's going to. We're only 12 days in. It's going to. It is. Well, thank you, everybody. And Mr. Ray, you are here today and representing your accounting firm. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay.
My firm is Erwin Branton CPAs LLC. I'm on the corner of East College and South 6th Street right here in Griffin.
Okay. All righty. All right. We are going to go ahead and turn it on the program over to you, Ray. And now you know who we are, and we look forward to what you have to share with us.
Great. All right. I'm going to keep it short. 10 minutes was the goal. And I've listened to each of you tell me a little bit about your businesses. We have a fairly small group. You may want to share some of this information with other small business owners that you know. So, you know, I'm going to tailor my comments a little bit because I'm not, I think what's appropriate from what I'm hearing might be a little different than what I've got down. But let me just pick up with my first point was prepare for unexpected downturns. I think this applies to everybody. COVID, if one thing COVID has taught us, there was a lot of free money flowing. You know, we saw that happen from the outset, and our government scrambled, federal government sending out, passing new legislation. We saw a lot of new law passed in 2020 and 2021. I think a takeaway from all of that is to be prepared yourself and not be dependent. You know, being small businesses and having the opportunity to coach small businesses or to encourage small businesses in their relationships, the topic that touches all of that is being personally responsible. One thing I've seen, I graduated from UGA in 1992. Got to say go Dogs, since we got another national championship finally. So hopefully there's some others celebrating that. But I've seen a lot of small businesses over the years. One thing I see that's really common is we get excited about the idea of our small business and what we're going to do, but we don't give a lot of thought to the bookkeeping side, the accounting side, if you will. We might think of ourselves as being fairly inconsequential in terms of accounting because we don't employ someone. And so our business model is pretty simple. It's still fairly easy to start up a business. Outside of getting a business license, you can literally be a sole proprietor, which is more or less just an extension of yourself, you know, what you might think of as an alter ego, and start doing business. You know, you'll need a federal tax ID number to open up a bank account. But even if you don't, say you just open up a second personal checking account to operate as a business account to segregate your funds, you can do that with your social. So my point here is it's still in our country, while there's a lot of law and regulation, and these vary depending on the type of business you're in. You know, you can still start up a business very simply and quickly. And sometimes that leads to missing steps like accounting. So I think the top priority for hearing from the ones here on the Zoom call now, and I would say for most small businesses, would be to prepare for emergencies. You can't know what that emergency is going to be or when it's coming, but COVID has shown us don't be dependent on our government or third parties, lenders to provide you with cash flow. Some of you may have done a little financial planning for yourselves personally. One of the first steps for personal financial management is setting aside an emergency fund. You know, some would say, okay, start small. Dave Ramsey is one of these guys. You may have heard his name before, and he advised you to set aside $1,000. That's a starting point. If you think about it on a business level, and if your business is new, you haven't really established exactly what you're going to be spending. So it's not as easy sometimes, but don't let that defeat you. Hopefully you've given some thought and looked forward with your business over the next 12, 24 months. What do you think you're going to spend? And then you start to think, okay, how much do I spend on a monthly basis? And you maybe try to set aside enough to cover a month's worth of expenses. I would say you ultimately look out 2 to 3 months. So I'm going to leave that point there. I think that's a great priority. And if you had to come up with one priority, I think that's a good one to consider. So that hopefully you can sort of have your own cash flow. And while you may apply for the opportunities for some of the support that's being given from our government, or you might have a business credit line with a lender, it's good for you to have your own ability to carry yourself through some leanness that you weren't expecting. Second priority, I would say, would be to engage more technologically. You know, I struggle to keep up myself, and I consider myself a fairly computer literate, digital individual. But be open. Don't, you know, everybody here, you know, we're all, I think, fairly young, maybe 50s and down, hopefully somewhere in there. But my point being that you're never too old or too young to embrace something. I've found, you know, I'm in my early 50s now, and I used to think that it was the young people that were the most technologically capable. I don't know that that's true. I think it's a personality thing to some degree. So if you are inhibited against technology, for example, think about the ways you might engage the IRS. Nobody likes the IRS, all right? But the IRS, they are understaffed. They have been for quite a while. COVID brought out how sorely understaffed they are. If they struggle to, and I've dealt with issues now going on 2 years that really came about because they don't have enough people to process, whether it be a return or correspondence, whatever's coming into their IRS office, and they have them all throughout the U.S. They can't keep up. But one thing they do keep up with, and that they are continuing to expand, is their internet presence. All of us on this call, if you don't have an account set up, and the IRS just started a new system in November called ID.me. And it's a government-based system that will probably carry across to Social Security Administration. If you went to SSA.gov and wanted to look up your personal earnings record and projected benefits, a lot of good information there. ID.me is going to be a common login for a lot of government sites. You need to go do that. And, you know, there's some frustration sometimes with the third party, with the ID verification. They're going to try to interface with your credit file. You might struggle to verify who you are with credit file information. Don't give up. And the newer system they've put in place is probably easier. I haven't been through it yet myself, but probably easier. But spread that word around. And then you know, as a CPA, I appreciate being sort of the first guy people think of to advise them. You as small business owners, if you have a relationship with a firm or with an individual like myself, you oftentimes will call or email me first. And while that's fantastic, and I like playing that role, it's been overwhelming, particularly ever since COVID-19 came into the picture, because there have been more need for information, and more people have needed advice and advising from public accountants like myself, CPAs, from any kind of business advisor, attorneys, bankers. But there's a lot of information, particularly with the IRS and with the Georgia Department of Revenue, you can get on your own if you will set up this account I'm talking about. Georgia has a website called the Georgia Tax Center, and I'd like for you to familiarize yourself with that if you aren't already. And let me move on and say too, related to this, the IRS has a payment system called the Electronic Federal Tax Payment System. Businesses use that and have used that for years. Individuals can use that. Everybody, if you are making money, you are going to have to pay some amount of income tax. And you need to have an account at EFTPS.gov. and that's going to allow you to process payments electronically. So some of you on this call probably have an account and you don't even have any checks. I know all of my kids, they're in their 20s. They have set up bank accounts in recent years. They don't have checks. They use third-party apps like Venmo or Zelle to move money, and those are things you need to be familiar with too. But EFTPS.gov, the Georgia Tax Center, the governments have given us ways to pay our taxes electronically, and you ought to do that. So you need to look into that. And let me move from there into what I just talked about is payments. All of you want to be paid for what you do. Nobody's out there offering their services for free. If you make it easy for people to pay you, they are more likely to pay you. I've experienced that personally. I started using embedding payment links in my invoices about a year ago with QuickBooks Payments. So QuickBooks Intuit has a merchant. They provide merchant services along with a lot of other things they do with small business. And if you do business with me, I send you an invoice and there's a payment link, and you can click on that and securely enter your credit card information. It's as secure as it is anywhere else. All right. So we're not 100% secure. So you have to get over any fear of that. And you can easily then enter your payment information, and I'm paid and you're done with my bill. You're not going to get a follow-up invoice or some reminder, and then there's a lot of ways for money to move. I mentioned Zelle and Venmo. Familiarize yourself with payments. PayPal is expanding what they offer and how you can get paid. So I think all that is important. And to wrap this commentary up on this second priority, we're still ahead of the curve with various cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin is the most common that a lot of people are familiar with. I'm not taking payments, and Bitcoin is well established and been around. I'm not going to take your payment in Bitcoin yet, okay? But I can see the day coming, and it's not too far off, when I'm going to process a payment in some alternative currency. And I'm okay with that. It's not going anywhere. It's a part of the digital accounting revolution. And that has been going on for a few years. COVID has sped it up. So start learning more about what cryptocurrency is. Don't get stuck on the complexity of it. Don't try to understand all the nuts and bolts about how it works and why it works, but try to familiarize yourself with some of the basics. And it is basically another form of currency. It's just not underwritten by a government. It's simply digitized and it floats around. It costs a lot of money, real money, to create it. So learn more about it over the next year, and don't be caught off guard as our economy starts to normalize cryptocurrency. Okay, let me move into the last priority. Yes, ma'am.
I have a quick question about what you said about using like Zelle and things like that.
Yeah.
I know that just like everything else, it's easily hacked. It seems it's dangerous a little bit. Do you feel pretty safe using Zelle, like to shift money around?
Yeah, I really do, Cindy. If you have a pulse, and you do, and we all do, you are at risk just because you are living in this day and age. And whether you like it or not, you have already been digitized. You probably have data on the dark web. You really can't live unless you're traditionally off the grid. If you've heard that terminology, that would be a really extreme reaction to wanting to exit from the world and our U.S. economy. Okay, people aren't going to take that kind of step. So unless you just unplug from life, you are already at risk. So when you ask me, am I comfortable with Zelle and Venmo and alternative payments? I'm as comfortable as we can expect to be, okay? Because I'll tell you what you need to be doing to protect yourself is checking your credit file. In Georgia, you can look at your credit files from the 3 major bureaus once a year for free. All right, I would not sign up, and Clark Howard is the real Atlanta-based guy. He's been around for a long time. Go to clarkhoward.com and take in how to manage your credit, protect your credit. part of doing that is protecting your identity. That's why I bring that up. I'm not talking about managing credit, but when you talk about managing credit, you're talking about protecting your identity and being aware of fraudulent activity associated with your Social Security number, which is the number everything revolves around. Although things like two-factor authentication and other methods of authenticating who we are prevalent now, and you should be participating in those. But the bottom line is you need to monitor your activity. Make sure you engage credit card sources and your bank account electronically, online, every week. Be looking at what's going on. Credit cards continue to be a wonderful tool. As long as you're not irresponsible with managing them, credit card companies are a really nice buffer between fraud and me. They give me ample time to react if I'm not ignorant of activity on my account, but you've got to participate. That's why when I talked about setting accounts at irs.gov and the Georgia Tax Center, those are proactive steps that sometimes traditionally we think, oh, well, those are certified public accounting things. Those are my CPA's job, my advisor's job, my business advisor. Well, you've got to participate more than maybe you. It's ironic. The computer age has probably brought about so much more complexity. It hasn't made anything simple. 50 years ago, we thought having computers would be so revolutionary that we would all be able to relax more, but it's more confusing than ever. But you've got to participate. You cannot sit around being ignorant. And it's tough because if you're a small business owner like we are on this call, you're busy all the time. Mm-hmm. I mean, you don't ever unplug completely. Hopefully you find a way to take some time off because you need to do that. But if you're going to be successful, it's a lot of work. There's no such thing as a 40-hour work week. You're not going to gauge you're not going to manage your financial life by a certain number of hours. You're going to invest in your business. So to do that, you got to pay attention. So if somebody's going to use my Zelle account fraudulently, I'm going to know it pretty quickly. And I think those systems, particularly if you use apps, they really are much safer than you think. If you look at statistics, Cindy, and I'll stop with this last comment, most of the time, hackers get your data because you gave it to them. Did everybody hear me? Most of the time, hackers get your data because you gave it to them. You clicked on an email, you clicked on a link, you clicked on a fraudulent text. They are gunning for you. They're gunning for me. I'm a CPA. I'm supposed to know about these things, and they assume that I don't because I get emails all the time, and they're very good. I mean, some of these emails are really, really good. So you got to be on your toes and paying attention. But if you do that, and you can, you're very unlikely to have a problem using whatever you're using. Now, with that said, you can't just indiscriminately go set up accounts with every Tom, Dick, and Harry that's going to process a payment for you. So use reputable sources. Ask your fellow small business owners, who do you use? Be careful with Google searches. The internet has a lot of tricks and turns, and so you can't suspend your thinking, and don't get in a hurry. But the point is, don't be afraid of these things. Yes, ma'am.
Question.
Sure.
So what are your thoughts on Cash App? I have a funnel cake business, and many times I will have customers that come up and say, hey, do you accept Cash App? I only do card or cash. I'm open to doing Zelle. I've done Zelle before, but I really and truly don't feel comfortable doing Cash App. And my thing is, if I'm wanting to picture my business as a Chick-fil-A or a McDonald's, you're not going to walk in there and ask them, hey, do you guys take Cash App? So I specifically just do card and cash. What are your thoughts about me doing Cash App? Do you think I need to kind of start being a little more open to that?
Well, I'm learning with you, so I couldn't tell you about Cash App specifically. I don't know anything about it. I've got to educate myself. So what I would tell you to do is keep track of how your customers want to pay you, because if you're missing out on money because you're not able to take somebody's form of payment, then you should look further into that. If you find Cash App is not secure, or you're finding
it's not.
Okay,
it's not.
So I would tell you then don't use it, but find something else that you can pitch to your customers to say, you know, I don't use Cash App, but here I use something that's better for you and me. And then you introduce them to that. Everybody can download an app. Everybody uses their mobile phone. So it's pretty easy to help people understand if they can't pay you with cash or credit card very easily, there's some app that you can trust. So you look into that and then help your folks understand that's a new method that you offer.
Okay.
Yeah. So look into do some little research on your own and see what you find out. There's a multitude of payment apps out there. PayPal is expanding the type of payments that they will process, and they're kind of a good go-between to sort of vet some of these sources.
Okay.
Zelle is something I mentioned because Wells Fargo uses Zelle. If a big,
Yeah.
now Wells Fargo has been a questionable institution. They've been in the news, in the last decade with bad news, but they're a large banking institution. If you have large companies using an app, maybe that's a sign, okay, it's been better vetted. So I like how you're thinking because you're being cautious, but that just should drive you to dig further for alternatives. Put Cash App aside and look for alternatives. But my point is, you want to make it easy for people to pay you. Don't make it hard. Don't make it hard for yourself, but you got to be open to non-traditional sources because those are things that are going to get less and less usable. Okay.
Okay.
I hope that
Thank
helps.
you. Definitely did.
Last thing I would say, folks, is on the bookkeeping bandwagon, you need to have an accounting system. Okay. Everybody has heard about QuickBooks. Okay. So QuickBooks Online, they're subscription based now. And a lot of these online accounting systems are subscription based. And that just means you're going to pay them every month. All right. And that's probably how we're accustomed to paying for things nowadays more than not. So it's just a different model for paying them. And in fact, I kind of like the subscription model. Some of you may use the subscription model yourself. I'm hearing about the kind of businesses you have, and the subscription model is probably a little easier to pitch for selling your service than asking for somebody to pay you sort of on an as provided basis. But the point being, the point being is that you need to have an accounting system. Xero.com, Xero has been out there for a while, and they're sort of the QuickBooks alternative. So QuickBooks and Xero would be two sites to check out. But formalize some accounting, and that's not as hard as it sounds. And by doing that, you can start to track your bills and who you owe. You can start to track your customers. Usually these, particularly QuickBooks, you're going to have some customer database software built into it, vendor database software built in there. So you can keep better track of some details. Now, I'm not trying to weight you down where you're spending a significant part of your week doing bookkeeping. It's easier than you think, but don't come to your CPA, your tax preparer, and have too little information to offer. And then you say, well, I want to stay out of trouble with the IRS. I want to stay out of trouble with the Georgia Department of Revenue. I've got income in 10 different states. I even have some income from countries overseas. And then we start to ask about your accounting, and you've got this hodgepodge of things. And maybe you've done a lot of business using eBay, but maybe you've done business that's not part of eBay. And now we're trying to piece together this picture that gets really hard. So make sure you have a centralized point of accounting. And usually QuickBooks, Xero, they've already thought through how to integrate sales platforms you might be using, payment platforms you might be using. So take the time to get that set up so that, and it needs to be online. Don't do something on your desktop on a computer. And then check out the related app. Usually a good accounting program that's online, they're going to have an app that works well with it. Okay, QuickBooks does that. Couple of closing comments. Keep learning. There's a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's been around a while.
Yeah,
one of the habits in there is called sharpening the saw. I'm preaching to myself here because I don't do this enough either. I got a stack of stuff over here that I need to read, and you got to manage your time. You can't read it all. Say to yourself, I'm going to set a goal of reading 2 articles today from some reputable news source, magazine, industry publication, something that's going to help you develop and learn. So make that a habit. All right. Even if it's 30 minutes a week, but try to hone your skills. And there's always something we can learn. As a CPA, there's so much I have to learn. You assume I know it all when you come to me, and I don't. Many times I'm having to research what I'm going to tell you, but I know what I'm looking for. But I'm going to have to go out there and do that legwork. And there's some of those things you can do for yourself as a small business owner. All right. I'm going to leave it there. Cindy, let me turn it back over to you, or Trudy. I'm not sure.
It's okay. Either one of us. You guys, now this is a Q&A time. This is the time to go ahead and ask Mr. Ray what it is. Let's see, what do we got? Some questions. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That is by Stephen Covey. And then, okay, Carmen, you said made a comment here about transactions encrypted.
No, he was talking about these questions to ask of these different
Like
processing
Cash App?
company to make sure
Okay.
that the transactions are encrypted. And my understanding, I don't know, Chelsea, but my experience with Cash App has been that it is safe and secure, but I guess maybe some people have had issues. Yeah, but I just making sure that the transactions are encrypted was what that comment was about. Like you want to
Yeah, that's right.
make sure that when you're asking those questions, he was ask questions of your credit processors.
That's right. Yep.
The other thing that I found, you guys, I use PayPal, but I also recently signed up for Zelle because I have a Capital One checking account, and that's what Capital One uses is Zelle.
That's right. Yeah, that's another one.
It is another one.
Bank of America too.
That do they? Okay. And then my children use Venmo. So if I'm going to get money from my kids, I need Venmo.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I have found particularly with having a son that is in the computer tech world that does coding, he is very, very much about using your using your iPhones, using the tap and that sort of thing, because he said those numbers are changed every single time that transaction happened. I have a different number every time. And it, even though, yes, it's linked to my credit card, it's still linked that way. He says he does that. Go ahead, Chelsea.
Mrs. Trudy, I remember you also recommended me to sign up for LastPass. That has been really, really effective and great. I think you should share that with them too.
Yeah. LastPass is very encrypted, and it's, keeps all your passcodes in one place, your security codes and stuff like that. And you got to have one password if you want to get into it. And yours truly has forgotten hers. So I had to really make it something that I would remember. Yeah. My tech children just kind of shook their heads. That's all I can say.
Even with LastPass, you set up a two-party authentication, like you still go through that process. Because and so I get a text or I get a message, like everything, my Facebook, everything has two-party. Like I know if somebody's trying to log in. One of the funny things is I guess I'm on with the Spalding County Leadership, the Griffin Spalding Chamber Leadership Gmail. And so every now and then, like Cindy have the message, somehow I have control of the account, and sometimes she has control. And so she'll be like, did you get a text message with a code? Or I'll say, did you get a text message with the code trying to log in? Because it's set up that way. And so every account, you need to at least have that. I think that's the thing. I had a question about, QuickBooks. I think, do we have another session coming up, like an actual workshop through QuickBooks, I think, right? Like an actual, we talked
about it. I don't think we set it up.
Okay. That's what I need. I want the workshop, because we talked about having an extended session where people bring in their laptops and, even having making it 2 hours that day so that we can, Cindy, I think you're muted.
Yeah, I thought I could press my space bar and unmute, but that may be something that we talk to Small Business Administration, the SBDC. They sometimes offer those classes, and there is a fee for that, but they bring in the expert on those programs, because I wouldn't feel comfortable, even though I use QuickBooks Online, trying to teach somebody else how to use it, because I'm going to miss something, and I don't want to mislead somebody, especially if I'm using it improperly. And then there's a lot of features that I don't know how to use myself, but I use what I have. So
okay.
maybe
that gal. Cindy, remember Carmen, you two, Albert, I think so. We had Mary Buzio from Journals and Ledgers over in Sonoy, and she is a QuickBook advisor. She's certified, has gone to school for QuickBooks, and we originally had her set up, and then she got sick with COVID, and we had to cancel and pivot.
Okay.
So is that what
Bring
you're
her
talking
back.
about? Yeah, because we did have it set up. Okay.
I know that's where I know my accounting system is not the best, and so my CPA is like, when I come, like, girl, if you don't get your stuff together, and I'm like, I'm trying. So
okay. So we can do that. We will look, Albert, you and I, we can look into that then to see about doing a QuickBooks and making an extended session as well. So that would work. And she can show us some of the ins and outs. And then I think we might have a little bit of money in the small business that if we needed to, or if she was willing to do that as a service. And
let me make a comment about that as well.
Sure.
So sometimes we think about software like QuickBooks, which QuickBooks has done their certification program for quite a while. I've been working with that program since 1990.
You too? Okay. Well, then you come touch us.
No. Let me. That's not really what I spend time doing. I don't have the resources to keep up with all the demand there is. But here's what I want to tell you, and what I want everybody to hear. So QuickBooks can go pretty deep. It's a good, robust small business accounting software. But you don't. If you will utilize the basic, about 5 or 10% of the program's power, will at least keep you at the minimum organizational level for bookkeeping. All right. That's what you want to do. Don't get too caught up in trying to learn so much that you're going to take advantage of everything QuickBooks has to offer. Because what happens is it grinds you down to a point where you throw it aside because you're tired of trying to figure it out. And there's a lot of ways to create bad data. And you're going to waste a lot of time trying to set up your file with all the bells and whistles working, and you're going to wind up with bad data. So your chart of accounts, okay, that's an accounting phrase, is your backbone. You need a little help setting that up properly. You would want to connect your bank account so that you can download data. And there's a little trick that you need to understand in QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop. And I'm going to steer you towards QuickBooks Online just because that allows you to share your file seamlessly with your tax preparer, CPA, whomever you're using to help you with bookkeeping and accounting. And that's really, really important. You want to be able to share that with them. So you need a little guidance on the download area where transactions come in from your bank or your credit card. Once you get those moving parts working and you got it set up, just get into a routine of updating data every week. Let that roll on. Don't try to get fancy for probably a good solid 6 months until you're really good at doing the basics. Just walk. And if you will do that, you will save yourself a lot of headache. And then you can piece by piece start to do a little bit more with the program.
What was the other program you said? You said Xero.
Xero, yeah, it's xero.com.
XERO.
Yeah, and I'm not recommending. I have no relationships with these organizations. If they turn out terribly for you, please do not blame me. But Xero, I like Xero because they're clean, they're simple, they're a QuickBooks alternative. And Xero was started from the ground up to give people who didn't want to use QuickBooks. And I will openly tell you, as much as I know about QuickBooks, and I know an awful lot, I did the certification program for a few years, and I got tired of doing that every year because it wasn't necessary anymore. I can tell you a lot about QuickBooks. QuickBooks is far from perfect, and I'm not a fan. It's adequate. QuickBooks Online is fine. It works. There are things about it I don't like, and Xero is a cleaner interface. It's going to be less clutter for you. You're not going to be as overwhelmed with what you see on your dashboard, which sometimes can be very, very frustrating, confusing, even after you've taken classes and watched videos. So compare and contrast. Some of you are going to like QuickBooks better, and people you know, others would like a Xero. And there are some other alternatives. I don't really have any I can tell you off the top of my head.
I'm looking at now, article comparing them, because what I know is with technology and these tech companies, a lot of them have, QuickBooks is has been the gold standard or the name in the industry, but there are new things that come out that are always just as efficient or better, like you said, cleaner interface. So I'll do the research. Thank you.
Yep. You're welcome.
No,
But Raymond, may I ask
I-
the question too, though? Does it not also, if you did zero, you would need to check with your accountant too to see if they're familiar, and you just print it out, or do you give them, do they have the program? Am I right? How would
Okay,
you?
if you're printing anything, Trudy, you're doing it wrong.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
You should be able to
I don't print.
share.
I don't
Yeah.
print, but okay.
Well,
Wait,
and
that reminds me
I'm
of that
having
commercial.
fun. What's that?
But that reminds me of that commercial where it's like you're becoming your parents and they print out their airline tickets.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, we live in a QR code in a mobile society where things are digitized, and the more you're comfortable with that, the more you make yourself comfortable with that, the better off you are. So I still print stuff too. So I'm having fun here.
Yeah,
I see the printer behind you, so I know that's true.
Yeah, you're right.
My
Exactly.
children
Good
don't have-
observation. I can't hide. I have to narrow what you see here. But the point is, Trudy, Xero and QuickBooks Online are going to allow you to share the file with your accountant. So even if your accountant is not familiar with Xero is pretty easy to grasp. And anybody who is worth being a tax preparer and an accounting advisor, and it's certainly a CPA, if they're not able to handle just basic functionality of Xero.com, I don't know that they're necessarily somebody you want to continue with,
I understand.
and I think they'll be fine. But I think your observation is good. Check with your accountant and say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. Are you okay with that? If I share this file with you, are you able to connect with that and see what they have to say? And as long as they are, an honest answer is fine. That I don't know much about it, but I'll figure it out. Versus if they act scared about it, then maybe that's not a good way to go. You may need to just change advisors at that point, or look at QuickBooks. It's kind of like with the payment apps, and whether you do a Cash App or whether you do something else, there's a lot of alternatives. So I'm just trying to encourage everybody on the call to look into these things, because the takeaway here is set up an accounting system, don't get fancy, and do it online.
Well, see, and my point with that too, Ray, is that, for instance, when I switched to a MacBook, I ran into, from my accountant, I ran into the obstacle that it doesn't transfer, the Mac,
Right.
it will not convert from the PC to a Mac. And she's the one that told me, but yet she also said there's a third-party app that would convert and be a Windows on my Mac, so we can still take care of that.
There you go.
So that's the reason why, yes, I mean, my relationship, and thank you for reiterating that too, the relationship with your accountant, you guys, is everything.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I use the QuickBook apps on my iPhone, and there's a version called for entrepreneurs, and it actually tracks your mileage. Does Xero do that?
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I don't really work with Xero a lot. I got one client that's using Xero, and I like using their Xero file because it's easy. But QuickBooks is so everywhere, and I've tended to, people already know about QuickBooks. They've been marketed. QuickBooks is marketed. Intuit has marketed QuickBooks so heavily. So that's really where I spend a lot of my time. But I would like, and I've toyed with at times, how I might steer more people away from QuickBooks to get a program that's a little more easy for them to work with. And Xero has always been one I've liked and felt like would be a good alternative to engage. And, an app, you got to have something like you're talking about, if they don't track mileage, there's probably an app Xero will support and import data from that would be mileage. But QuickBooks is good in their app with mileage. And
right.
I think that's a valid reason to use QuickBooks if you have a lot of business mileage and you like the way their app works, because that's a tool that often, people talk about income tax and documentation. Many folks lack a good log. They think, well, I can't keep up with the log, going back to that printing, old school, writing things down. So an app tracking your mileage, your phone's already a GPS enabled little data center and computing center. So that's a great way to use it. Right. And QuickBooks is fine. So, if you look into another software and it just doesn't feel right, fine, go with QuickBooks and use their app. I think they've done a pretty good job. I'm not trying to talk them down as much as I'm just trying to say there are other players in the field to consider.
The other one that I know of, you guys, is called FreshBooks Accounting, and it is specifically geared to small businesses.
There you go.
That is another one that I have seen, that I have seen.
Yeah, definitely check that out. See if they have an app, and do a little due diligence to see if it's the right fit for you. I've heard of FreshBooks. I don't have any experience with them, but I have heard of them. They've been around a little while too, I believe.
Yes, they have. And I looked into it only because when I started running into that glitch of coming to a MacBook versus my PC, that's why I was looking at them. FreshBooks.
Trudy, if you do it online at that
You don't
point,
have that issue.
you don't have that issue. Exactly.
We don't have that. That's right. I just haven't converted yet. I'll be honest. I'll be honest.
I understand.
I'll be honest. Anybody else have any other questions or comments? Okay. Cindy, do we have some announcements from the chamber?
Thank you, Raymond. I appreciate your time today. And thank you everyone for being so understanding to transfer today to virtual. I think we had a good conversation.